My name is Ariana Cooper, and at 31 years old, I was living what seemed like a quiet life on the outskirts of Denver. Just 6 months after my wedding to Lucas Hayes, I secretly became the heir to 3 upscale apartments, a legacy left by my grandmother, Ruth Simmons. But I kept this a complete secret. Not a word to my husband, not a whisper to his family. No one knew. We had a small, intimate wedding at the end of fall, surrounded by the fiery reds and golden yellows of the season. In the quiet chapel, between rows of wooden pews, Lucas held me close and promised we would build our entire life from scratch, together. I smiled at his words, but a part of me knew my foundation was already set. Far more solid than he could ever imagine. Ruth was the most formidable woman I had ever known. She came of age in an era where women were actively discouraged from financial independence. But after losing her husband early, she single-handedly raised 2 children and meticulously built an impressive real estate portfolio. For years, I believed she only owned her small, tidy apartment with its balcony overlooking Sloan's Lake. The truth was, she had been quietly acquiring property for over 30 years, as if she was building an empire in secret. The day she passed away, I felt a grief so profound I couldn't get out of bed. It was a deep, slow ache. She wasn't just my last living relative, she was my mentor. The one who taught me everything from how to compose a formal letter to how to dissect a balance sheet. About 6 weeks after the funeral, her attorney, Mr. Kenneth Doyle, summoned me to his office. I was expecting a few sentimental keepsakes, maybe the old gold watch she always wore, or some of her journals. Instead, he presented me with a thick stack of papers. Each one was a deed of ownership. There were 3 apartments, in total a 2-bedroom penthouse downtown worth over $8,000, upper-level unit near Washington Park valued at around $1 million, and the smallest one, her own home, which I decided to keep as my personal sanctuary. Altogether, the properties were worth well over $2 million. I was utterly speechless. My hands trembled as I signed the documents. Kenneth looked at me, his voice gravelly and serious. Ariana, your grandmother was very, very clear. These properties are yours and yours alone. He leaned forward, emphasizing her final instruction. Never let anyone else make financial decisions for you. Not even someone you love. At that time, I was deep in the honeymoon phase. Both literally and emotionally. Lucas and I had just come back from a trip to New Orleans. He never questioned my hesitance to talk about finances. I made some vague excuse about not being ready to merge our bank accounts, and he just nodded, accepting it as perfectly normal. But I knew better. I had learned the hard way that money changes people. Ex-boyfriend, Sean, had quietly siphoned nearly $100,000 from our joint account to fund a bizarre canned coffee startup he never bothered to research. Before him, there was Will, who always expected me to pay for everything with the excuse, "You earn more anyway." Those experiences had left deep bruises on my ability to trust. Lucas, of course, felt different. He was gentle, patient, and intelligent, a communications director at his family's real estate marketing firm. He came from what he described as comfortable money. Not flashy but secure. His mother, Veronica Hayes, however, was a puzzle I hadn't yet solved. I spent countless nights lying awake, staring at the ceiling, wrestling with my conscience. Was I starting my marriage with a lie? Or was I just being smart, protecting myself from a game I never wanted to be a part of? In those dark, quiet moments, I could almost hear Ruth's voice whispering to me, just like when I was a child. Not everyone loves you for you, Ariana. Sometimes, they love what you have. The sooner you learn the difference, the less it will hurt. This was more than just a family story, it was a lesson in survival. My first encounter with Veronica was at an intimate dinner at the Hayes family estate. Was massive white brick colonial home in Riverfront Park, with a backyard larger than my entire apartment building. She descended the grand staircase as if it were a runway, wearing a beige Chanel blazer and a Patek Philippe watch I'd only ever seen behind bulletproof glass. "So, you're Ariana," she said, her voice a soft whisper that carried the sharpness of a razor. "Lucas talks about you. A lot." I shook her hand, feeling the expensive lotion on her cold, dry skin. She didn't smile. She just tilted her head, her eyes scanning me from head to toe like she was appraising an antique at a private auction. Dinner was a formal affair in a walnut-paneled dining room under a glittering crystal chandelier. Veronica sat at the head of the table, with Lucas to her left. I was placed directly across from her, next to a floral centerpiece the size of a motorcycle helmet. "What is it that you do again?" she asked, just as the main course arrived. Her tone was so casual, as if she were asking about the weather. "I manage content for a digital publishing platform," I replied, my voice steady. Interesting," she said, a faint smile finally appearing. It's not the most stable, is it? I mean, not everyone manages to last more than 5 years." I just smiled and took a sip of water. I was accustomed to these veiled interrogations, disguised as polite conversation. But her next question sent a chill down my spine. "Where are your parents?" "They passed away. I was raised by my grandmother." "Ruth, right?" I froze. I had never, not once, mentioned my grandmother's name to Veronica. "You know," she continued, her eyes fixed on her swirling glass of wine, "I believe I met a Ruth at a charity event a few years ago." I nodded slowly, but inside, my alarm bells were ringing. What event? Ruth despised those kinds of functions. She preferred her garden and the Financial Times. The dinner ended with stiff, awkward hugs and a hollow invitation to drop by any time. But as I left that house, a dreadful certainty settled in my stomach. Veronica wasn't just a difficult mother-in-law. She was a controller, and this was the beginning of a toxic family drama. The following week, I received an email from a woman named Lorna Fisk, who claimed to be an old friend of Ruth's. She invited me to a financial planning seminar at the Oxford Hotel. It seemed innocent enough, till I Googled her name and discovered she was a financial advisor who had previously worked for the Hayes family company. I deleted the email. 2 days later, I saw a strange man loitering outside my building. He was pretending to look for directions, but I saw him glancing repeatedly at the tenant directory. I wasn't being paranoid. I was raised by a woman who taught me that when someone shows an unusual interest in your assets, you need to ask what kind of debt they're trying to escape. 3 days after that, Lucas came home and tossed a stack of envelopes on the kitchen counter. "Mom sent this?" he said casually. Inside was a detailed real estate market report for my neighborhood, along with a handwritten note. "Seems this area is going up fast. Don't let anyone pressure you to sell low." I stared at Lucas. "Did you tell her about this apartment?" "No. I think your mom is investigating me." Lucas laughed, but his smile faded when he saw the serious look on my face. "You're serious?" I just nodded. For the first time, he looked genuinely unsure. The next morning, as I was making coffee, my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. "Is this Ariana Cooper?" "Yes. I'm an assistant to Mrs. Veronica Hayes' attorney. She would like to arrange a private meeting to discuss long-term financial planning within the family." I gripped the phone tighter. I have no obligation to discuss my personal finances with anyone but my husband. The assistant's voice remained robotic. "She believes the meeting will help clarify your long-term commitments." I hung up, my heart pounding in my chest. Felt like invisible hands were prying into my life, trying to crack open a vault I had sworn to protect. That evening, I found Ruth's old notebook. On a folded page, in her shaky but distinct handwriting, were the words, "Someone wants control of your assets, they don't love you. They're just testing to see where you're weakest." Lucas left for a marketing conference in San Diego early that Monday. Before he left, he kissed my forehead. "Try to be kind to my mom, okay? She's just trying." I nodded, but I felt a growing sense of dread. The first 3 days of his absence were blissfully quiet. I used the time to manage my properties, feeling a sense of control. But on Thursday afternoon, the doorbell rang. I peered through the peephole, and my blood ran cold. It was Veronica, dressed in an ivory overcoat, a luxury handbag tucked under her arm. Beside her stood a gray-haired man in a dark suit, holding a slim leather briefcase. His expression was polite but utterly blank. I opened the door, my hand gripping the frame. "Hello, Ariana?" she said, her voice like honey mixed with poison. "I hope I'm not intruding. I've brought Mr. Nathaniel Reeves, our family notary. There are just a few documents we'd like you to look over." I didn't invite them in. "What kind of documents?" "Oh, nothing major," she purred, gliding past me as if she owned the place. "Just some asset protection paperwork. To keep things safe and efficient." Mr. Reeves followed her, setting his briefcase on my dining table. He clicked it open, revealing a thick stack of papers. The apartment suddenly felt frigid. "I understand Ruth left you a few properties," she said, settling into a chair as if hosting a tea party. "Nothing to be ashamed of. I just want to help you organize things properly. The Hayes family always uses a trust system. It avoids taxes and unnecessary legal risks." I stared at the paperwork, dense with cold, dry text. This was the moment I had been dreading, the ultimate relationship story test. "I have never agreed to share my personal assets with anyone," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "And Lucas never mentioned anything about this." "Oh, Lucas doesn't need to worry about these matters," she said dismissively, her eyes like chips of ice. "It's just what we do." Even Tracy, Lucas's sister, transferred her home into the family trust when she got married. I clenched my fists. "Are you asking me to sign everything I own over to you?" "Not to me," she corrected smoothly. "To the family. The trust benefits everyone. Of course, Mr. Hayes and I are the trustees, but it protects us all." I walked to the table and picked up one of the documents. My eyes scanned the page until they landed on Clause 4.3. Full authority over assets shall remain with the trustee for the duration of the agreement. "No," I said, placing the paper back on the table. "I'm not signing this. This is property I inherited legally before I ever married Lucas. I will not give up control of it." Mr. Reeves raised an eyebrow. Veronica simply sighed and pulled out a silk handkerchief. "I don't see why you're being so emotional," she said flatly. "Being part of this family means respecting how we manage wealth." I looked her straight in the eye. Respect means not bringing a notary into someone's home uninvited. "Remember, Lucas is the only son," she warned. "What you have affects the family estate." "No. It's not our estate. And if you think Lucas would approve this behind my back, you don't know him at all." Just then, my phone rang. The screen lit up Lucas. I answered and put him on speaker. "Are you okay? Mom said she was stopping by," he said, his voice cautious. "She's here," I replied evenly. "Sitting in my living room. With a notary. They want me to sign papers transferring Grandma Ruth's inheritance into your family's trust." A heavy, crackling silence filled the line. Lucas sighed. "Mom, seriously." "Lucas," Veronica cut in, still perfectly composed, "I'm only doing what's best for the family." "I'm coming home tomorrow," he said, his voice firm. "You are not to pressure Ariana into signing anything. That is her property. Not the Hayes estate. Not yours." After he hung up, Veronica stood up, her polite mask completely gone. "You're playing a dangerous game, Ariana." I pressed my lips together. No. You just lost one. When the door finally shut behind them, I stood there for a long time, my hands still trembling. This was a true cheating story, not of romance, but of trust and family loyalty. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, saw Veronica's cold, calculating stare. She hadn't tried to persuade me, she had issued a command. She was a predator, patiently waiting for her prey to weaken. But I wouldn't. The next morning, I sent an urgent email to Kenneth Doyle. Subject urgent. Securing independent ownership. I was just pressured to sign over my inherited assets. I need you to implement every possible legal safeguard immediately. He called within the hour. Ariana, he said, be careful. People like Veronica Hayes don't just use paperwork. Lucas came home late that afternoon. He saw the box of documents on the table. Is it true? He asked, his voice rough. I nodded. She brought a notary. Asked me to sign. He sank onto the couch, his hands through his hair. Why would she do that? You should ask her, I said. This isn't the first time she's used money to control someone, is it? He didn't deny it. Why didn't you tell me about the apartments? He asked quietly. I didn't dodge the question. I opened the folder and laid everything out. Title deeds, rental income reports, the trust summary. Total value is about $2.5 million, I said. 2 units are rented, bringing in about $6,500 a month. I kept this one to live in. I didn't tell you because I needed to be sure I could trust you. Not just with love, but with boundaries. He bowed his head. Mom. She did this to my sister, Tracy. Tricked her and her husband into signing their property into the trust. She took control. You knew that? I asked, a new wave of anger rising. And you still let her get close to me. I didn't think she'd go this far. He whispered. She didn't just test my limits, Lucas. She blew right past them. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with a pain I hadn't seen before. I won't let her interfere again. You need to know, I can't control her. I'm not asking you to control her. I replied, my voice low but firm. I just need to know whose side you're on. We sat in silence. No one won that conversation. But one thing was certain. From now on, no one would touch my assets without going through me first. This was my perfect revenge in the making. 3 days later, around 10 p.m., I got a call from an unknown number. My name is Marcus Weller. A man's voice said cautiously. I used to be the chief accountant at Hayes Media Group. My heart started pounding. Think you need to know the truth about why Veronica is so focused on your assets. He told me everything. Hayes Media was drowning in debt, at least $6,000, mostly from my father-in-law Charles's secret sports betting addiction. The company was on the verge of collapse. She plans to use your inherited property to cover their debts. Marcus explained. They want to use your real estate as collateral for a massive loan. I felt a cold, sharp focus settle over me. Does Lucas know? I asked. I don't think so. They keep him away from the real financials. The next morning, I met with Kenneth Doyle and laid out the entire sordid story. We formulated a plan. The meeting was set for Saturday afternoon at my penthouse. The space that once symbolized Ruth's peace was now a battleground. Lucas sat beside me, tense. Across from us sat Veronica, cold and composed, and Charles, looking disabled and nervous, projected a legal document onto the wall. I have conditions, I said plainly. 1 unit, the one in Park Hill, can be used as temporary collateral, but only if 3 conditions are met. Veronica scoffed. What conditions could you possibly set? Lucas turned to her, his voice like steel. You should listen. Because if Ariana doesn't agree, the company is finished. I looked straight at Veronica. First, Charles will enroll in a 45-day inpatient gambling treatment program. Already have the referral. Charles started to object, but a single look from me silenced him. Second, Lucas will resign from Hayes Media Group. He has already accepted another offer. No more financial entanglements. Veronica's eyes widened. My son is quitting the family company because of his wife. No. Lucas cut in firmly. I'm leaving because I want to live by my own values. Not clean up messes you've hidden from me my whole life. I delivered the final blow. And third, you will write a formal letter of apology, acknowledging your intrusion, and you will commit to never interfering in our finances again. The room was silent. For Veronica, the apology was the deepest cut. Charles spoke first, his voice gravelly. I'll go to treatment. I can't watch my family fall apart anymore. Veronica stared at me, her eyes narrowed as if recalculating an opponent she had grossly underestimated. I'll write the letter. She finally conceded. As they left, Lucas turned to me, his voice a whisper. You did what no one in my family has dared to do for 30 years. I leaned my head on his shoulder. I didn't want to win. I just refused to be erased. This satisfying revenge wasn't about destruction. It was about reclaiming my own life. 1 month later, everything began to change. Charles was admitted to Bridgewell. Lucas thrived at his new job, a light returning to his eyes. And I hired a sharp assistant to help me manage the properties, which were now running more smoothly than ever. The most surprising change was in Veronica. 3 weeks into Charles's treatment, she asked to meet me at a cafe. She looked smaller, softer. She handed me a signed copy of the apology letter. I want you to have this, she said. I treated our family like a business merger, and I saw you as a hostile takeover. I was wrong. The structure was already rotten. For the first time, I saw a mother, not a monster. I don't need an apology to move on, I told her. But I do need real change. Life started to clear a path for me. I was promoted to content director at my job, a goal I thought was years away. Then one March morning, I stared down at 2 bright red lines on a pregnancy test. I walked out of the bathroom and showed Lucas. He froze, wrapped me in his arms. We're going to have a little family, Ariana, he whispered. We started making plans for the Ruth Simmons Foundation, a program to teach young women financial independence, funded by the rental income from the apartments. To my shock, Veronica offered a significant initial investment, with no strings attached. Consider it a grandmother investing in the next generation, she said. And I believed her. Pregnancy didn't slow me down, it fueled my determination. I invited the first girls from our pilot program to Ruth's old apartment. One of them, June, asked me, "Do you think I could learn to invest like Ruth?" I smiled. You don't need a degree to start. Just knowledge and determination. And you already have both. One evening, Lucas stood behind me on the balcony, his hands on my growing belly. I used to think my greatest assets were the family company, he whispered. But now I know it's you. And what you believe in. Ruth once wrote that success isn't measured by wealth, but by how many people you help stand on their own 2 feet. Story wasn't just about protecting an inheritance. It was about finding my voice, setting boundaries, and turning a legacy of property into a legacy of empowerment, starting with the child growing inside me, and for every young woman I could reach.